Welcome to the Marquette Hoops Basketball Show. My name is John Dodds. Our theme is We Live in the Past so you don't have to. We want to thank our major sponsor, Moonlight Graham, a great team player providing modern dental benefits. Our objective on each of our shows is to preserve and protect the rich heritage of Marquette basketball and follow the current staff as they add to the basketball recruiting class of 2022 and 2023 and through the portal. On today's show, backed by popular demand, Joe Moran. He's written several books on Marquette basketball, including You Can Call Me Al, the biography on Al McGuire. Joe and I will try to jog each other's memories with as many Marquette stories as we can come up with in our time segment. As always, the venerable Tom Pippins will be there, keeping the show on track and professional. Again, thank you to Moonlight Graham, our great sponsor, providing modern dental benefits. Here's Joe Moran.
After the book was out a while and Pat McGuire had a chance to read it, and
Al's better half,
and with her friends, and whenever she would talk to them, she would say, "This is the Bible," and
that's saying a lot, Joe. Kudos to you for that.
Thank
and the
you.
trust
You're very
that
kind.
you earned with the family. I mean, that was huge because Al didn't.
No,
he wasn't big on this kind of thing, was he?
No, but I was politely persistent for a few years, and as I mentioned in a previous episode, that Al was hemming and hawing for some time, and I finally said to George Reedy, I said, I really want to do this. And I said, we don't know how much longer he's going to be around. And I said, I'm prepared to go unauthorized if that's what it's going to take. And he said, if you do that, be prepared to have a lot of doors slammed in your face, because Al's friends are extremely loyal. Mm-hmm. And he's loyal to them. So it took a while, but when I met him on Labor Day weekend in Pewaukee at his small office at the Harkin Industrial Complex in Pewaukee, and we sat for 3.5 hours just talking, and he said, but you don't really know me. He said, Roger Janes has traveled with me, mm-hmm. All over. He's been with me to garage sales and restaurants and
The old Journal reporter.
Yeah,
and
another great
games.
writer. Mm-hmm.
And so he said, I think what you're doing by doing all this research at the archives, he said, it seems like it's just too theoretical. I had no idea that Al knew what theoretical was. So I said, what it's like is there are so many areas of your life that what I'm doing is I'm just taking those pieces, like putting a puzzle together. And that's how I'm going about this. And then he kind of stopped, and I think that image of creating, putting a puzzle together clicked with his images, his imagery. And I think that's what he kind of glommed onto. And at the end of our conversation, he said, it's your book, it's your baby. You do whatever you want to.
Boy, that was a seminal moment, huh?
You talk to anybody you want to. And once we had arrived at that point, he said, now, it's important that you get the name Flower Child in the title of the book. It's got to be brought in there somewhere. And at the end of each chapter, he said, you need a story at the end of each chapter that would tie that chapter up like a nice bow. Yeah. And so he gave me the go-ahead, but Al did it with the condition that he was not going to promote it. He was not going to go on Good Morning America. He was not going to go on Marv Albert's Madison Square Garden Network show. He was not going to do book signings. It was all on me. So, but the fact that he gave me the go-ahead, when nobody else did get a go-ahead, I feel very, very fortunate. Now, the the book is available on my website, which is jdmpress.net. And there, on the home page, there's a tab that says Contact Us. And when you click on that, you can send me an email. They can give me the where they live, what their address is, how many books they'd like to get, and also how they want it personalized. And then, once I get that contact information from them, then I can make an order and we can get the book to them.
jdmpress.net.
That's the website,
Yep.
and that website has the foreword of both this book and Going Uptown, which is about the 2003 Final Four team.
Yeah.
And it has the forwards of both books. Bobby Knight did the foreword
Knight,
for
yeah.
that. Rick Majerus did the foreword for Going Uptown. It has photos of both books. It has newspaper reviews of both books. It also has reader comments from people like Ray Meyer. After Ray read the book, he sent me a letter saying, Joe, I thought I knew Al McGuire, but it wasn't until your book that I really learned about Al McGuire.
Didn't they have some games together, the former DePaul coach?
There was just a great deal of respect between the two coaches. Al always felt that Ray should try to get into advertising, and do commercials. And he said, Ray, you would be perfect for Geritol. That would be the perfect commercial forum for you, Geritol. And there's also a biography of me in there, as well as some blog posts. The one big blog post has to do with everything that I went through to try to get Al and convince him to allow me to write the book.
You can call me Al, and to your point earlier, the colorful journey of college basketball's original flower child. That's great. And Going Uptown, Marquette's March to Madness and return to the Final Four with D. Wade.
In this segment of the Marquette Hoops Basketball Show, we'll look back on what many consider the glory years of Marquette basketball with a man who lived through it. John Carrey, the retired executive director of the MAC Fund. John was a student manager for the basketball team from 1969 to 1973. During that time, Marquette basketball lost only 10 games in those 4 years. They had some of the best teams and some of the best players, including Dean Meminger, Jim Chones, Larry McNeil, Bob Lackey, and Allie McGuire. Freshmen were not eligible to play until their sophomore years at that time, and the class of 1969 freshmen of Chones, McGuire, and Sugar Frazier beat the varsity in the preseason scrimmage, and that varsity team later won the 1970 NIT. Here's John Carrey, former basketball manager, and this segment's brought to you by Moonlight Graham, a great team player providing modern dental benefits.
There were two coaches. And then we brought Rick on. I mean, you literally watch the games, and there's more people. When they used to wear suits, now thanks to COVID, they just wear quarter zips or T-shirt. They're polo shirts.
Right.
But in those days, you would do it, and I had like 3 coats, but I'd wear nice ties. And so you always looked like I was well dressed, and the referees would say I was the best dressed manager in the country. And we were up at Williams Arena in Minneapolis, and it's an elevated floor, which is sort of amazing. McGaw Hall at Northwestern's like that too. And the refs, I knew all the refs, and they were all nice. And there was a call, and I just started yelling, and the ref comes over. He goes, "Johnny, I called it in your favor. Be quiet or I'll have to give you a technical." And Al just looked at me, he goes, "Sunshine." He just shook his head, and I was sort of like, I was small enough, but I became smaller. But, there's a classic, no one knows about this story. We're playing at Minnesota, and I was a senior, and, I knew everything, and, naturally I was 22 years old. Who doesn't know everything at 22 or 21? And Al says to me, "Make sure you get a key for the locker room." I was like, "Why?" There's always a security guy there, so naturally I didn't get it. So we're playing, and it's a close game. And Musselman was the coach at Minnesota. And I'm the last guy off the court, and I come down, and they're all outside the locker room, and the door's locked. I said, Coach, I'm sorry I didn't get a key. He said, no problem, Johnny. So I go and I find a security guy, and as the security guy is walking down the hall, Coach starts screaming at me, yelling like he never yelled, and the players were all like, and we get right outside the locker room, and Allie goes, Dad, you can't talk to Johnny like, oh, no. Opens the door, throws his arms around me. Way to go, Johnny. He's going to go back and tell that Musselman that I'm crazy. We got the edge. Way to go. Way to go. And that was him. I mean, that sort of epitomized him. And the players were all like, you are crazy. But, I'll tell you, once that ball went up, we'd watch games. Mary and I would watch games before we had our 6 kids. And I'd say, they got to call a timeout. And Al would be doing the game, and he'd go, they got to call a timeout. And she'd say, how do you know that? I said, and I knew him. And we knew when to call timeouts. And you're right, now it's at 16 minutes, it's a TV timeout.
Yeah.
Well, back then it wasn't. And guys would get hurt. And
Right.
Now, we weren't the smartest. I remember one time, he looked at him and he goes, he had a great speech. I said, Coach, that's a great speech. He goes, well, Sunshine, I'm glad you liked it. It wasn't meant for you. The total IQ of this team doesn't equal body temperature. But I'll tell you what, he stood by those guys, and he was he had his faults like we all do, but I don't think anybody ever questioned what he put into the coaching, so.
John Dodd was correct. We've got enough material here to take our Marquette Hoop Show into the summer, John. This is just...
Well, I apologize for talking so much.
This is fantastic. It really is.
Some of it, I mean, the best stuff you can't say. There wasn't really too much of that. There was a little bit, but the key was, I think one of the most amazing things was who turns down an NCAA bid?
Mm-hmm.
And he was upset because he'd say, yeah, these guys all get together and we all have all these meetings, and the young guys leave the room to go have a drink, and the old guys make all these rules. And he felt that they were screwing him because of, some of his shenanigans and that. And I mean, he'd have the Bumblebee uniforms. They banned the Bumblebee uniforms, which were horizontal stripes, because they made people dizzy. I mean, what a stupid thing to say. And he was just like, But the uniforms with the South Carolina game went to the athletic director. You must be excited to show your new uniforms. He goes, what? Oh, Sammy, didn't I tell you that? I mean, I was in the locker room. It was just so funny. And Dr. Saucedo was smart enough to just smile, and he was a prince of a man. And I gave Marquette administration a lot of credit. They gave Al the room he needed to. You couldn't box him in. And when he left, I mean, who would have ever thought he'd retire at 47 years old?
He went out on his terms after the championship. And
he took a left turn or a right turn, whatever, coming out of the subdivision, probably a right turn. He said once a month you have to do it. And we still once in a while we hear from some of the old guys, and they'll talk about that kind of stuff, and just some great things. Well, you guys are so nice. I mean, this will probably get cut out, but both of you are just so nice, and you're such tributes to the city and to the university, and Tom, to you in the media, and what you're doing now with My Faith with Homer and Pip. That's a good promo for you.
Yes, it is.
Not
you were a guest, and you were wonderful.
Not God talk like Jason Wilde
like
calls
Jason,
it.
right.
We call it My Faith with Homer and Pip. But Milwaukee's just a very special place, and I think that the fact that Coach never left. I mean, think of that. Stayed the entire time, and just how lucky we were. And thankfully they have the Al McGuire Center, and the statue of him, and we could pay $1,000 to put our name on the thing, and so I did. And then I heard rumors that Allie put in a bunch of money, so everybody's name got on it. And I said to Mary, we could have saved $1,000. But our grandkids were down there the other day for the NIT women's NIT game, and they posed and pointed to John Carrey, which, you know, when you're an Irish grandfather and your little kids do that, it's sort of special.
Yeah,
and, you know, so.
John, he was a prince of a man. We were blessed to have him. And the same holds true for you. Thank you for joining us. Just fantastic.
Well, thank you. The honor is there. And I'm wearing a Marquette basketball alumni thing. About every 5 years we get together. And I'm sure Shaka will continue that. And it's so important to not forget, you know, where you came from. And it's funny because Al would bring guys in occasionally. And, you know, I graduated in '73, so I'm now out of college almost 50 years. So if I went to watch one of their practices now, it would have been equivalent to somebody from like 1920 graduating class coming now. And we just, you know, you just respected it, respected the people, and I'm sure that the guys that are there now do as well. And they're going to have a great year next year with all the freshmen. They're going to be sophomores and a couple juniors, and they got some good incoming freshmen. And Shaka, I think, is the real deal. Anytime Jay Billis speaks as well as somebody as Shaka did. And Jay Billis predicted that Baylor would lose. I happen to see him. I'm timing this, so I guess it screws up your timing, but they'll edit it out anyways. But, you know, Shaka, I think, would be a great addition, you know, to Marquette. And, you know, continue a great tradition, and pretty cool.
In this segment, let's turn our attention to the 1950s and pick it up with 95-year-old former sports information director Jim King. Jim worked as SID from Marquette from 1951 to 1959. He was hired at the same time Coach Tex Winter replaced Bill Chandler in 1951. It was a time when Marquette had both football and basketball. When Jim left in 1959, he hired Bob Harlan as the successor as the sports information director. Thanks to his son Joe King for the suggestion of using his father as a guest and a great resource. Again, this segment's brought to you by Moonlight Graham, a great team player providing modern dental benefits.
They were playing Michigan State regularly, Wisconsin. Every year, those two were on the schedule in football, and they were moneymakers for Marquette in that respect. But when they began to lose those connections, they were losing the money on it and couldn't afford to maintain a football team. So, boy, that's a long time ago.
1974, our high school played at Marquette Stadium on roughly 37th and St. Paul.
Yep.
And it was in dire shape. It was just crumbling. I think they took it down probably by maybe one sledgehammer, and the thing just collapsed probably.
That was a mess. That stadium was long. It was there a long time.
But in its prime, it was a very good stadium.
Yep. I remember going to a game there in which they put bleachers in the end zones, and we played, I think, Virginia or West Virginia that day, and sellout crowd. The Packers played there 1 or 2 years, and they loved it because all the seats were between the goal lines. So he had big ticket prices.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Jim, you mentioned you used to watch a game, like you say, right there in front.
Yep.
But you had to have that old Royal
That's
typewriter,
right, that
and
old
just every
typewriter.
play. That's incredible. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, just dragging it into a ball game was this high, and walking up all the steps to get into the press box with this typewriter. It was crazy. That was crazy, but it was fun.
Yeah.
So what was the media like back then? So you're sports information director. The Journal, the Sentinel, would it be anybody else like
Well,
that?
you covered, you would phone in or write in leads, or at least encapsulated play-by-play, and you'd give it to your teletype operator, and he'd send it into the Associated Press
Okay.
or the Tribune. I used to get paid a weekly fee for sending in stories to the Chicago Tribune. And it was $75 a month. That was a lot of money then.
Yeah, sure.
To keep the Chicago Tribune sports desk informed about what was going on with Marquette. And I remember Wilfred Smith was a big reporter, or sports reporter for the Tribune, and he had kind of an affinity for Marquette. And I remember when Marquette defeated Kentucky in a regional final or quarterfinal, I remember he was sitting next to me and he said, "That's the most perfect game I've ever seen played." And it was, because Nagel would sit there and had a offense going that took advantage of every weakness that Kentucky had in that game. They upset Kentucky 79-71, I think it was. That was a major upset, but it was a showcase
in the NCAA against Adolph Rupp.
Yep.
Yep.
That's where I sat the night before that game in Evanston. Mr. Rupp was sitting next to me and decrying the fact that he didn't even know where Marquette was. Where sitting, I don't know who their coach is or what he looks like. And I remember he was sitting next to me. I said, "Here's the coach." Shake hands. Shaking hands with Jack Nagel, and he turned around and beat him.
Yeah, he got his comeuppance, didn't he?
Yep. The most perfect game I've ever seen played. That's what Wilfred Smith said when they were finished. He was sitting covering it for the Tribune. And it was a great game to watch. And all local guys, all local. Whitburgers, Don Bogalski, Hofflinsberger, they were all right here from the state of Wisconsin. It was great.
So is your recall. That's absolutely incredible. So that's obviously a great highlight for you, Jim King, in your career as SID at Marquette. What else stands out as you look back?
Mostly, what stands out for me, at least, is the fact that Jack Nagel brought Marquette's basketball into the big time, if you want to call it that way. Instead of being an independent playing here and there and everywhere, they were playing power schools every year on a regular basis. So the sad part about Jack Nagel's tenure there as a coach was he was so unheralded. People didn't even, I think it took him for granted, and he was doing wonderful things with that team and for the school. So I have a lot of admiration for him. He's an easy guy to work with.
Jim, you think about Marquette getting to the Final Four with D. Wade, and now they're playing in the Big East with Shaka. Does your mind kind of go back to, you know what, we owe a debt of thanks to a guy like Jack Nagel for building a foundation?
That's it. Yep. So, and I think about where football was going at that time. Man, you just, if you couldn't schedule Michigan State and Wisconsin every year, you were in trouble. And that's exactly what happened. So,
one of the interesting hires you had was a student in journalism by the name of Bob Harlan.
Yep.
Talk about Bob Harlan as a student. He became very famous years later, but he was very well known in the student body for his capability. But
that's right.
Talk about him in sports information, if you could.
Well, Bob, he covered he did a little of everything when you think about it. But I remember when he left Marquette and went to work for the Packers. And he went to work for the Packers because the Packers had come to meet. Lyle Blackburn went up
Yeah.
from Marquette to the Packers to coach. And twice they came down. When I think about it now, it was the mistake of my life, possibly. Twice they came down from Green Bay to see if I would come up there and work as the sports information
PR director.
Yeah.
up there.
Right.
And I turned them down because I had one of my 8th children was coming on the way, and I wasn't about to move up there. And I didn't know how long Mr. Blackburn was going to be around there as a coach. So I recommended that they take a look at Bob Harlan.
How about that?
And that's Harlan took it.
And the rest is history.
And the
right?
rest is history.
And you're a big part of that. Packers fans ought to know that,
Yep.
all the way up to a Super Bowl.
You know, Bob Harlan, interesting thing, Bob Harlan lived in Wauwatosa, and he and my dad were friends because they went to the same high school in Des Moines. He would always tell my dad and the neighbors that his dream job was to be PR director for the Green Bay Packers because he was a football guy first.
Yep.
He liked that, and so when Bob, you left in '59 and went to Freighter, I believe, to be the PR people at be a PR person at the hospital. So Harlan, you hired him out of school basically to take your job, but then they dropped football right away.
Yeah.
Was he surprised at that?
Yeah, he was, because I remember him calling me up on the phone saying, "You knew they were going to do this. They were going to drop this." I said, "No, I didn't." Yeah, he only had 1 year of football at Marquette. I think so.
Yeah, 1 year of
About
football.
one.
Yeah.
And then the door opened up for him. And I'm glad to see that he did as well as he did. He was a great guy, and still is a great guy to be around.
Well, I mentioned to people that when Marquette dropped football, the result was the Green Bay Packers ended up with 2 World Championships and Super Bowls because Bob Harlan went up there and hired Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson.
That's right. Yep.
That's our show for this week. Thank you to our great guests. Please visit our website, marquettehoops.com, part of the 24/7 Sports and CBS Digital Network. If you go to the front page, you can sign up for our free newsletter, get updates as to future guests on our TV show, and get Marquette recruiting updates. Finally, our TV show is archived on the front page. If you know of any Marquette fan out of the viewing area of Channel 24 who would be interested in our show, please send them an email link to the front page of our website. Thank you for watching. Until next week, go Marquette.